In 1956, when the PNM won the elections, we promised self-government. We achieved that. In 1962, following the collapse of the Federation, we promised independence. We achieved that. In 1976, we promised to change the Constitution and become a republic. We achieved that. In 1980, we promised to lift the bar in Tobago and change the administration from County Council to Tobago House of Assembly. PNM achieved that. Now, we are promising you reform of the local government system in Trinidad. And after you vote solidly for the PNM on November 28th, we will achieve that, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, there are those who would have you believe that this election is about roti. There are those who would have you believe that this election is about inside and outside children. It is not about that. Whether you want to return our country to those who want to turn roti into an issue, the issue is about returning our country at the local level to those who want to return to profligate spending at the local level. And we do not want that for Trinidad and Tobago. I am sure that you are seeing the subliminal message about rioting on posters and Botiwari's Facebook message about rioting. These are the same persons, their leader no doubt, who promised blood in the streets if they were not elected. Remember that, ladies and gentlemen. The PNM is not about that. We are about making a better place for us all in Trinidad and Tobago. And I stress, for us all. We are about making the reality of our anthem, where every creed and race find an equal place. That is the PNM. But for us to give effect to ensuring that, we have to ensure that you all come out and vote solidly for the PNM on November 28, 2016. Do not give in to apathy. Do not give in to that voice in your head that says, PNM win already. Do not take anything for granted. Remember that the battle is not over until the last ballot is cast and counted. Ladies and gentlemen, you must ensure that on November 28th, Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation is safely in the hands of the PNM. And the only way you can ensure that is by coming out and voting. Take nothing for granted. Political leader, General Secretary, my cabinet and parliamentary colleagues, councillors in waiting, for far too many decades, for far too many years, local government has been a breeding ground of complaints of lack of funding, inefficiency, poor service, and that there is not enough to go around. This PNM administration, having spoken to you throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago, we believe those of you in Trinidad understand and know exactly what you want. We have listened to you carefully. We have compiled what you have told us, and we are putting everything in place to implement what you have requested. Our Vision 2030, as we said in our Vision 2020, is that people must be at the center of all development, especially the development of where they live, where they work, and where they recreate. Local government reform means bringing the government to you, for you, and by you. I'm asking you to recall what happened when the last government tried to take over the Etihad ground. You all remember that? When the residents had to take the government to court. Ladies and gentlemen, they were taken to court because they did not consult with the residents of the area. They did not care what the residents thought. And your local government reform will ensure that consultation with residents is an integral part of how local government performs. The question that I want to propose to you tonight is to ask you if you know what this reform will really entail for the development of local communities, especially as it relates to the planning process. Vision 2030 requires that good governance be at the forefront of all decision-making. This is seen very clearly in all and most developed and developing countries. It is a model that emphasizes self-management, enhanced community participation, and the involvement of people at the level of determining what their communities look like. Under this reform that we are proposing, the new Planning and Building Inspectorate will be responsible for approvals for billboards, approvals for signage, approvals for all advertisements. They're also responsible for planning permission for all simple developments and the change of use from residential to commercial use of buildings. The new inspectorate will be responsible for additions to buildings, subdivisions of parcels of land comprising 20 lots or less. Importantly, the new inspectorate will be responsible for the enforcement of complaints. Many of you have complained about roadside garages. The new inspectorate will be able to deal with that. Many of you have complained about industries that spring up on your street that is only for residential purposes, but there's an industry in the middle of a residential area. The new inspectorate under this reform will be able to deal with that. But one of the things that will be most important is that public consultation will be a must, and developers must put up a notice before they develop any land or building. Too often we see development taking place in our community and we knew absolutely nothing about it. But ladies and gentlemen, what are the issues that this change will deal with most effectively? You and I understand that the planning process has tended to be extremely lengthy. So sometimes if you want to build a simple house or if you want to make a change to your house, too often it takes over 3 months, 5 months, sometimes over a year to get your approval from the Town and Country Planning Division. With the reform that we are proposing, the local government will be able to give you those approvals in a much shorter time. And ladies and gentlemen, what does that mean for those of us who are trying to gain our own homes? It means that that bridging loan that you get from the bank, when you only have a certain length of time for that loan before you get your actual mortgage, you don't have to go over the time because the approvals for planning are taking way too long. It means that your development of your buildings, your homes, your commercial buildings can take place at a much faster rate. It will also mean that our planning process will become more efficient, more focused, and less prone to interference by those who want to interfere corruptly with the process. And ladies and gentlemen, what will be the impact on land use planning? Land use is fundamentally about meeting human needs and translating those needs into what we want to see our community look like. And those of you who live in these communities and its environs, you know what kind of community you want. Most of the time, the people from the central government do not know exactly what your community is all about. Those of you who live in Arouca, you know what Arouca means to you. You know that Arouca is the home of emancipation, the home of the slave history. Those of you who live in Lopino, you know about the Conte de Lopino. Those of you who live in Maloney, you know how important the mall is, how important the basketball court is. And when you have the opportunity to determine what your community looks like, you could see yourself reflected in your community. And that is what local government reform means in that context. Ladies and gentlemen, planning at the local level will result in greater respect, greater management, and conservation of the natural and built heritage within communities. Those of you who live along the East-West corridor in the Tunapuna-Piarco region, you know where there are the special scenic views, the ancient artifacts, the precious recreational spaces. You are the ones who can say what your community must reflect, what heritage your community must maintain. And it is only with local government reform under the PNM that these things will become a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, because of the fact that planning is so important to what our country looks like, the local government has determined that you must become directly involved. And because of this, there have been some advocates, some persons who have already moved this process forward. And tonight, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate those persons. Persons like those who make up the Tri-City Advocates for Sustainable Community, the Maloney Gardens Community Council, the Bonaire Gardens Community Council, the residents of Breves Road, Gittins Road in Maraval, Mr. Farrell of Stevens Road in Maraval. I want to congratulate also the police, who have consistently developed a program of town meetings in an effort to make a consistent change as they relate to their local communities. I want to congratulate the EMA for their community meetings and the Town and Country Planning Division for their community meetings. But ladies and gentlemen, as I heap congratulations on those groups, I tell you that local government reform will be of no use to any of us if we do not have the right legislation in place. And this whole issue of legislation, as you can see, is making me very, very hot. And I am now hotter than a chula. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to ensure that the right legislation is in place to actually get things done. At present, the Act, the Municipal Corporations Act of 1990, is still the act under which the local government bodies operate. But there is interminable bureaucracy that has resulted in burgesses not always receiving the services they require. The major changes that you, the people, have asked for in the 14 municipal consultations that we had were as follows. One, that the term of office of councillors and aldermen must be extended from 3 years to 4 years, and also that councillors and aldermen must be full-time and paid as full-time representatives of the people. We have heard you, and the legislation will reflect that. The legislation will have to be amended to give local government bodies the authority to collect and retain property taxes and fines. We have heard you, and the legislation will reflect that, because far too often local government bodies do not get enough money to actually institute the plans and projects that they have. Ours is the determination to ensure that all municipal corporations collect their taxes, are well funded, and use the money that they collect effectively and efficiently. Ladies and gentlemen, we must move away from the system where the money can be withheld if there is one party in governance at the central government and another party in government at local level. Too often, and we saw it very, very plainly over the course of the last administration, where if they felt that a corporation was a P&M corporation, not if they felt, when they knew that a corporation was a P&M corporation, They deliberately underfunded our corporations. That must not happen. And ladies and gentlemen, you know that the PNM is fair, and we would not do that. But we want to make sure that all corporations are treated fairly. A major legislative change will be the delivery of social services. And as my colleague said, the social services must be delivered right at your doorstep. Too often, people have to go too far to get their social services. Persons in the area know the people who are really the people in need. And that is something that will take place with the reform of local government. Once we have determined that local government corporations will collect their own taxes, the legislation of the Exchequer and Audit Act will have to be changed. And this change is to allow them to collect and retain their own funds and spend that money in the manner that they deem fit. And if the change goes as far as the THA Act has gone, it would also mean that if they have any money remaining, that they are able to keep and retain that funding. But that change requires a special majority, a 2/3 majority, ladies and gentlemen. And we know that those who are opposed to us, even though they talk one thing, they do something entirely different. So that is something that we will have to tread very carefully with. But we will bring the legislation to the Parliament. Let them vote against you, the people, not being able to have what is rightfully yours. A 2/3 majority is needed, and we will bring that legislation to the Parliament. What is also needed, a special majority, is for us to implement fully the municipal police. We can put 100 policemen, municipal police, in each of the 14 corporations. But for them to be under the police commissioner and the police complaints authority, we need a 3/5 majority to change that part of the Constitution. Ladies and gentlemen, that will not daunt the Keith Rowley administration. We will still bring those police for your safety and comfort, and we will ensure that we will bring the legislation and let them look you in the eye and say that they're voting against that. Ladies and gentlemen, the police that we intend to implement will be a little different from those who are normally with us. These will be trained in mediation. They will also be trained specifically in domestic violence issues and juvenile delinquency, so that they can touch each and every family where they need to be touched most. We, as an administration, are serious about these changes. And even if we don't get that majority in the Parliament, the police will still be appointed under the current system, and they will do the work that you need them to do. Local government is the voice of the communities. Local government is the voice of the people. Local government is the true politics. It is said that the politics, all politics, is local. And the PNM will ensure that with the reform, communities will do better, burgesses will be more satisfied, their needs will be more effectively and efficiently met. And I say to you tonight that it is only the PNM who can make that real. Ladies and gentlemen, our vision is to fully operationalize and network the government system, both at local and regional level and at central level. Why should the decision as to which company picks up garbage and for how many days be made somewhere other than in the Tunapuna-Piarco Regional Corporation? Why should the decision to repair the community center in Bonaire be made other than by the Tunapuna-Piarco Regional Corporation? Why should the decision to undertake minor repairs in the perimeter fence of the Maloney Government Primary School be made other than at the Tunapuna-Piarco Regional Corporation? Why should funding for minor roads in Curep Page, Valsain St. Joseph, Carapo, or Trin City be dependent on releases from the Ministry of Works or the Ministry of Local Government? Why can't we make those decisions ourselves? Why should the cleaning of cemeteries depend on a release from the central government? Ladies and gentlemen, we can answer those questions effectively if on Monday, 28th November, we take nothing for granted. You must go out and vote. Those who are opposed to us have no plan. We plan and we implement. Their plan is to talk lies, to try to deceive and mislead the people of Trinidad and Tobago. You and I will not be deceived. We will not be misled. We know that the PNM is the only true political party in Trinidad and Tobago. And because we know this, we must vote solidly for the PNM. We must ensure that all of us and our neighbors, our friends and family put our X by the balize. We must ensure local government reform for a better system and make sure that if you want better garbage collection, vote reform. If you want better building permits on time and correct for you, vote reform. If you want your local contractors to do business in your area, vote reform. If you want the schools to operate at a high standard, vote reform. If you want the taxes collected in your area to be used to develop your area, your people, vote reform. If you want to show that the PNM continues to work in the interests of all the people of Trinidad and Tobago, vote reform. And on November 28th, we will say in one accord, great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM, and we shall prevail. Thank you, God bless you.
November 28th, vote autonomy. For PNM, it's for you and me. Amongst warriors, for the children, we will break every barrier.